we had a 23-year-old female pass away. I'm not sure the circumstances, but we're suspecting suicide.
We now know that the body of a man found outside a home in Canton is that of a Boston police officer.
In the Sandra Birchmore case, a Stoughton woman who died under suspicious circumstances 3 years ago.
Officer John O'Keefe, who was off duty, was found dead on Fairview Road yesterday morning.
Her death ruled suicide by hanging by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. She was pregnant at the time.
O'Keefe's girlfriend is facing a number of charges in connection to his death, including manslaughter. Prosecutors say she hit him with her car last Friday night and drove away from the scene.
We're trying to get her case out there more so the medical examiner will open her case up more to take another look.
Birchmore's death originally ruled as suicide by the state's medical examiner.
O'Keefe was pronounced dead at Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton. We found his death certificate on file at Brockton City Hall. The ME ruled the manner could not be determined, instead of writing accident or homicide.
But the acting U.S. attorney saying today, federal investigators started looking into Birchmore's death about a year ago, uncovering critical new evidence and re-examining old evidence.
Defense attorneys for Karen Reed dropping explosive new details in court Tuesday about the findings of a separate federal investigation looking into John O'Keefe's death.
Our investigation also uncovered additional evidence that is inconsistent with someone choosing to die by suicide.
Reed's defense attorney saying an independent expert concluded that O'Keefe's injuries were not consistent with the damage to Reed's vehicle.
Like she would have committed suicide. She was so happy to be pregnant.
Everybody loves the things you do.
And there could be some striking similarities here.
To the way you move. Everybody here is watching you, 'cause you feel like home. You're like a dream come true. But if by chance you're here alone, can I have a moment before I go? 'Cause I've been by myself all night long, hoping you're someone I used to know. You look like a movie.
Good afternoon. On February 4th, 2021, Sandra Birchmore was found dead in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment. The charges filed today in federal court allege that she was in fact murdered by Matthew Farwell 3 days earlier. And he used his knowledge and experience as a law enforcement officer to stage her death to look like a suicide.
You sound like a song. My God, this reminds me of when we were young. Let me photograph you in this light in case it is the last time that we might be exactly like we were before we realized we were sad of getting old. It made us restless. It was just like a movie. It was just like a song. I was so scared to face my fears, 'cause nobody told me that you'd be here. And I swear you moved overseas.
Back in 2021, with the information that was available, Sandra Birchmore's death was ruled a suicide, or deemed a suicide. But over the last year or so, the FBI and our office have been working exhaustively with our state partners, and we've uncovered critical new information, examined the existing information, all of which led to this federal grand jury indictment.
That's what you said when you left me. You still look like a movie.
The ME ruled the manner could not be determined instead of writing accident or homicide. Keep in mind, a medical examiner would have had access to all the reports and evidence that law enforcement had before making that conclusion.
Turning your attention to January 31st, 2022, did you have occasion to perform an autopsy in regard to a patient or a body of John O'Keefe?
I did. This is a copy of the death certificate for Mr. John O'Keefe.
Listing related to cause of death, what did you list as cause of death on Mr. O'Keefe with regard to his death certificate?
Cause of death was blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia.
And with reference to manner of death, what, if anything, did you list on Mr. O'Keefe's death certificate in relation to manner of death?
I listed could not be determined.
Prosecutors have charged O'Keefe's girlfriend, Karen Reed, with second-degree murder. They say she hit him with her SUV and left him to die in a blizzard.
Karen Reed led into court in handcuffs. She pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
Lay dying on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road, where the defendant had left him after striking him with her motor vehicle.
Reed's lawyers have been pushing back on that. They allege O'Keefe was beaten severely and left for dead with injuries to both sides of his face and the back of his head. They also say he had wounds to his arms that look like dog bites.
Okay, so how did his arm get all cut up?
Because when his arm struck the taillight then cracked, and as the car is driving past him, the taillight could scratch it.
Got it. So he gets hit by the car, not his torso, just the arm. The taillight cracks, and as it passes by, his arm stays with it long enough to get striations. Does a pirouette, spin, counterclockwise, and flies 30 feet in the air to his point of rest.
Yeah, it happened probably a little faster than that, though.
I thought you said he hit his head on the curb.
If he gets spun around counterclockwise, it's a possibility that the curb is there.
How do you account for the fact that he didn't suffer a broken bone? How do you account for the fact that he didn't even have a bruise? How do you account for the fact that he didn't have a fracture?
I don't know.
But if this case goes to trial, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy will most likely be called to the witness stand. The defense could ask if O'Keefe's injuries appeared consistent with a car strike or something else.
And the injuries that you observed, would that be consistent with injuries that you observed in other cases of a pedestrian collision?
They're not the classic pedestrian injuries that we observe, no.
You still sound like a song. My God, this reminds me of when we were young.
A lot of talk today about new evidence from a federal investigator.
Right, Lisa. And according to the defense, the U.S. Attorney's investigation includes evidence that the damage to Karen Reed's SUV was inconsistent with the victim's injuries.
Federal investigators hired, independent of us, we had no idea, and independent of the Commonwealth, hired a professional reconstructionist, 3 PhDs, to look into exactly this issue. Did Karen Reed's car, did her SUV make contact with John O'Keefe? And their conclusion to a person was his injuries were inconsistent with the damage on the car. The damage on the car was inconsistent with having made contact with John O'Keefe's body.
Well, again, the entity that retained us in this asked us to evaluate whether or not the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe were consistent with the interaction or in interaction between the two.
So was the taillight damage consistent or inconsistent with striking an arm?
It was, our findings was it's inconsistent for a number of reasons. So both the physical evidence as well as looking at the biomechanical aspects of it are inconsistent with that head injury occurring due to impact with the rear of the Lexus.
Is the damage to the taillight that you saw consistent with striking a human head?
No.
In your expert opinion, is the damage to the taillight consistent with striking a human arm?
No.
Thank you. In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car.
We do in this office what we've been doing for decades with our federal partners like the FBI. We follow the facts, regardless of where they lead. We apply the law and the principles of federal prosecution. Full stop.
Period. Full stop. That's their independent expert.
Well, back in 2010, a 12-year-old Sandra Birchmore applied to join the Stoughton Police Department's Explorers program. Officer Matthew Farwell was an instructor in that program. And as alleged in court documents, he befriended Sandra Birchmore, contacted her online, went to the library with her, became friends on Facebook, essentially groomed her. And then he committed statutory rape by having sex with her when he was a 27-year-old police officer and she was just 15 years old. At the time of her death, Sandra Birchmore was a 23-year-old woman with her entire life ahead of her. And she was pregnant with her first child. And when it became clear to Mr. Farwell that he could no longer control Sandra Birchmore, he allegedly silenced her permanently.
It was just like a movie. It was just like a song.
This morning, a former police detective in Stoughton is charged with killing a pregnant woman.
People here at the Northgate Shopping Center in Revere couldn't believe their eyes when the FBI closed in and took the former Stoughton police detective into custody.
This cell phone video shows it culminated in this SWAT team arrest Wednesday morning of former Stoughton police detective Matthew Farwell. Investigators allege Farwell had an ongoing illegal sexual relationship with Sandra Birchmore, starting when she was just 15 years old.
It's a crying shame that we have these cops doing this stuff. I think he's a clown. He should never been doing what he was doing, and it's out of hand.
You could hear a pin drop in that Dedham, Massachusetts courtroom behind me. I mean, this is something that you've heard rumblings of, but when Yannetti actually said that there is an investigation that was confirmed yesterday during a phone call.
The Norfolk DA's office and the Karen Reed defense team participated in a conference call yesterday with a representative from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney confirmed during that conference call, confirmed for both parties, that not only has there been a federal investigation of this case, but it is ongoing. It's not over. It continues. The DA had this confirmed for them just yesterday, right from the horse's mouth.
Karen Reed is getting ready for trial. The feds are taking a look at the people who investigated the case and gathered the evidence that will be used against Karen Reed. This doesn't happen, folks. This is extremely unusual.
Court TV got a statement from the DA's office. Let's put it on your screen. They said this, quote, "No part of the communication with the Office of the United States Attorney yesterday or at any point has indicated that the Norfolk County District Attorney or any member of this office is the target of a federal investigation."
Between Sandra Birchmore and the Karen Reed case, supporters say they have a lot of questions about law enforcement, but not many answers.
Lastly, I want to note that we are sharing the information and the evidence that we developed in this case with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, with the Massachusetts State Police, and with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, so they can assess whether state charges may be warranted in this situation.
Just takes me back to when you were there, to when you were there, and a part of me keeps holding on, just in case it hasn't gone.
Finally, the FBI stepped up, got him, and now he's in jail right now waiting trial. Why the FBI had to go after and get Matthew Farwell, why didn't Michael Morrissey's office, and why didn't the Massachusetts State Police Unit under him get Matthew Farwell? But we still have a long way to go with her case to get other people under lock and key also.
Meantime, DA Morrissey's office did not respond to our request for comment.
They want justice for Sandra Birchmore and her unborn child. We're live in Stoughton. Erin Logan, NBC 10 Boston.
From Dedham to Natick, West Roxbury, Plymouth, and more,
In more than 40 Massachusetts cities and towns, hundreds of people spent the holiday standing out, at times dancing, in protest of the prosecution of Karen Read.
Signs of support everywhere on Sunday. One reading, Free Karen Read, Justice for John O'Keefe. Her family speaking out.
It means the world to our family to have complete strangers like this who, obviously recognize that Karen's innocent, and they've all come together week after week.
Karen needs justice. John O'Keefe needs justice, and he won't get it until Karen is free.
Everybody attached to this movement just wants the same thing, justice for John and the people who perpetrated this to go away.
All bringing attention at the same time to what's going on in Norfolk County and against Karen Read.
The case of Sacco and Vanzetti, two guys who claimed that we were framed for murder. An extremely famous and notorious case that divided the public. And in the end, they were convicted. They were executed, but 50 years after that execution, the governor of Massachusetts made a proclamation and proclaimed them innocent men, Sacco and Vanzetti. But from the beginning, they claimed they were innocent and they were being framed for what happened. That trial was in Dedham, Massachusetts. Now, in the same courthouse, in the same courtroom, Karen Read is saying, I was framed.
Giving voice to the voiceless, ensuring that no one is above the law, protecting the vulnerable people of Massachusetts, that's the highest calling of people in law enforcement. And this case represents those principles without fear and without favor. We do in this office what we've been doing for decades with our federal partners like the FBI. We follow the facts, regardless of where they lead. We apply the law and the principles of federal prosecution, full stop.
So shy, ain't like you to hold back or hide from the light. I hate to turn up out of the blue uninvited, but I couldn't stay away, I couldn't fight it. I had hoped you'd see my face and that you'd be reminded that for me it isn't over. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you too. Don't forget me, I beg. I remember you say sometimes it lasts and loves, but sometimes it hurts instead. Sometimes it lasts and loves, but sometimes it hurts instead.